What's up, y'all boys? It's Bugs. Welcome back to the channel. And today I'm gonna be talking about Dune, man. Part one and two. Just talking about this movie because I happened to watch it the other day. Both parts back to back. Because I never saw them in theaters before. And I happened to just watch them on a whim. You know, I was just scrolling through, I think it was Amazon. I was just scrolling through Amazon. And I was like, you know what? I remember hearing about both of these movies, so I decided to check it out, see what it's talking about, and I'll just give y'all some thoughts, a couple ideas about what I was thinking. Generally speaking, in the first movie, like to start it off with the first Dune, from what I garnered from that movie, is that it centers around this young man named Paul Atreides, who's like the son of a guy named Leto Atreides, who's the Duke. That's what they call him, the Duke of Arrakis. Oh no, not Arrakis. House Atreides. And Leto. So basically, what the Duke is the Duke is basically the king. That's who he is. He's like the king of where he's at. And so he's the he's the king of where he's at, and he has a son named Paul. He has a wife named Jessica. There's all types of lore shit going on, but basically, those three are like running this kingdom called House Atreides, and this is a sci-fi movie, by the way. So there's a whole bunch of space-based nonsense going on, but I'll get into that in a second because let's focus on what's going on and where they're at and what they're doing. The movie starts on a world called, I believe, Caladan. Honestly, it looks basically like Earth, but with a couple of futuristic things going on. But the story focuses around the journey of Paul and the rest of House Atreides to a world called Arrakis, which is basically a big ass desert. It's like a super like large desert. And the reason why they're there is because they're supposed to be mining this material or this mineral or like this let's call it an item. What it is a spice. That's what they say. That's what they say throughout the whole movie is spice. They're mining or they're like extracting the spice. You might be like, okay, why are they going to Arrakis? What is the spice? What is it for? Okay. In the movie, they set up the fact that spice is basically like the central most important plot MacGuffin, which is spice is the most important and like the single most valuable resource in the universe. Apparently, it has something to do with enabling space travel. Like the reason why they're able to go to different planets and all that stuff is because of the fact that the spice enables that. Now, how exactly? I'm not entirely sure. I don't think they really explain it in the movies, but that's what they say. Like the reason why they need spice is because it's the most valuable resource and it enables space-based travel, which essentially enables the rest of the universe to function because there's tons of different planets out there in the universe with all different kinds of civilizations. They need to be able to do trade and all that stuff. And in the movie, they set up a group of people that live on Arrakis. They're essentially like an indigenous tribe, if you will. Like kind of think of like the Native Americans in America. Essentially the same thing as like people that already live on Arrakis that are used to it. They're from there. That's their home. That's how they operate. And then House Atreides comes down to mine the spice. Now that tribe of people, the Fremen that live on Arrakis, they have a couple of important characters. But one of them is named Chani, and she actually does the introduction to the movie. She has like a nice little monologue at the very start of the film, but it basically is like a pretty ominous little monologue about how they are being oppressed on that planet, and so it gives you the idea that oh, they have a, I don't want to say like a slave master thing, but they have a like a overlord or ruler type situation. And what happens is we come to find out that there's another house called the Harkonnens. Now the Harkonnens, they're all pretty evil, and for some reason they're all bald. Now, what we learned throughout the movie is that Arrakis was actually for the longest time being controlled and ruled by the House of Harkonnen. And the reason why at the start of the film we see House Atreides coming in to take over the spice production stuff is because, come to find out, there's for like, I'm assuming he's the emperor of the known universe, but there's an emperor that had decreed that House of Harkonnen needs to give up their spice rule on Arrakis. They've got to give it to House Atreides, right? So that's why House Atreides was even given the chance to start taking over the spice production stuff. But then get this, it was a setup by the Emperor to get rid of House Atreides. So when the Emperor tells House Harkonnen, all right, we kicking y'all out, y'all getting evicted, you gotta, you know what I'm saying, get on, do something else, because we're gonna have House Atreides come in. Come to find out, it was actually a setup from the Emperor, because basically what the Emperor was thinking is, supposedly, Leto Atreides, remember the king I was talking about? He is so well revered by what we find out are the other house factions, because notice how I mentioned there was House Harkonnen and House Atreides. Apparently there are other house factions. He is so well revered by Leto, or Leto is so well revered by the rest of the house factions, that being the Emperor, this like paranoia that Leto was going to be able to garner enough power and allegiance across the universe to go ahead and challenge for the throne of Emperor and blah blah. Basically, I'm scared that I'm gonna lose my throne and my seat of power, so I'm gonna ruin what y'all got going on so that I don't have to worry about it, right? And basically, like, long story short, because I'm kind of rambling, Dune Part 1 is a story about how House Atreides goes to the world of Arrakis, which is a big ass desert, and tons of spice, which is super valuable, and got set up and got destroyed. Like, most of House Atreides got destroyed. Leto Atreides, the king, had died. Most of the like major characters that were like, what's the word, generals, had died. All of that stuff. And then Paul, which we're following Paul throughout the plot, most of the plot of the movie. That's why I said, like, oh, he's the main character, but you're kind of wondering, like, oh, well, you didn't really mention Paul much at all. Well, we're following Paul throughout the plot of most of what's happening. Like, we're seeing it through his eyes, or we're right there with him. Basically, by the end of the movie, Paul and Jessica, which Jessica is Paul's mom, they end up like escaping, and like they barely get out alive. And then Paul and Jessica, they end up running into some Fremen while they're out and about in like lost and stranded in the desert. And then they do like a trial by combat thing or something like that for Paul with this guy named Jamis. And they end up getting accepted into Fremen society. Mind you, this isn't even accounting for this long, I don't want to say convoluted, but this long plot about this thing called the Kwisatz Haderach and Lisan al-Gaib, which is basically like a super powerful being that can see into the future and is apparently supposed to be a messiah and all that different stuff. But it was pretty good. And then Dune Part 2 is essentially just a continuation of what happened in the first part of Dune. And then, like, in Dune Part 2, Paul and Chani, they get in a relationship. And then Jessica becomes this thing called a Reverend Mother, which is basically, like, I don't want to say she a witch, But realistically speaking, like, and the abilities that she has in the movie, she's basically a witch because she even has like this head covering thing that makes you think of that. And then at the end of the movie, or in Dune Part 2, it's like it's a continuation of the first part of what happens after House Atreides gets obliterated. Basically, Paul becomes like the king, and he gets in a relationship with Chani. They become Fremen. There's like a time skip that happens, but we don't really focus on that part until after. And then eventually he becomes the Kwisatz Haderach because of like this prophecy thing that he was trying to avoid half of the time, but ended up doing. And then after becoming the Kwisatz Haderach, he engages in a couple of fights actually. It's like a war. It's basically like a small war. They engage in a small war with the Emperor. And Paul ends up becoming the new Emperor. And then that's the end of the movie. And it was like it was a very long and convoluted plot, but it was very interesting. And like visually speaking, it was a spectacle. It was really, really, really good to watch. I hear that apparently there's a very long novel series about this IP, and it's making me kind of want to see what it's talking about because it's pretty good. Like they were good movies. Good performances by like, Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya and Oscar Isaac and Jason Momoa and the rest of the crew. Yeah, it was a good movie, man. A great movie, good plot. There's a couple of subplots that I did not really touch on that are happening through both of these movies, and like both of these movies are pretty long. They're like 2.5 hours each. So if you're planning on watching them, definitely do it when you have lots of time, like lots of free time. Like you're not trying to sneak these in before going to work or something. But yeah, man. I don't know, just my thoughts on the movies. I feel like they were good, and I'll probably go see whatever part 3 is whenever they get around to doing that, because that's the thing in the movie. At the very end of part 2, they start this thing called the Holy War, which is essentially like Paul and the Fremen are gonna go around in the galaxy to what is it again? Paul and the Fremen are gonna go around the galaxy. You know what? I actually am not sure why exactly the Holy War starts. It's just not coming to mind. It's just not coming to mind. I completely forget. It's something to do with the fact that his status as emperor was like not. Oh, that's what it is. That's what it is. My bad. The reason they start the Holy War is because at the end of the movie, when he beats the emperor and becomes the new emperor, the rest of the houses are like, nah, fuck that. We do not respect that shit at all. Basically, they're like, we don't respect your status as emperor. We think it's like a false challenge. We refuse to acknowledge it. Blah blah blah. You get the point. But yeah, very convoluted plot. So like you need to be a sci-fi fan. You need to have an open mind. You need to make sure that you're paying attention, because I'm telling you, if you miss like 5 to 10 minutes of the movie when they're doing exposition, you're going to be lost. But yeah, man, good movie. I would recommend it to anybody who's a fan of like Star Wars and all that stuff, because it's a space-based movie. And I mean, yeah, man, those are my thoughts. Pretty discombobulated and jumbled up vid, admittedly, but hey, that's what happens when you low-key speed through 2 movies. Kind of, I don't want to say speed through because I took my time watching those, but I'm telling you, it was a lot of plot. But yeah, man, let me know what y'all think about it in the comments below. Like the video if you like the vid, subscribe, especially if you're not, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.